Did you know the LA Kings have their own culinary partner? It's Superfood, celebrating 10 years and over 1 million meals served. Since 2020, the Kings have trusted Superfood to fuel their players. Now through Simply Lunch, you can bring that same performance-driven food to your office. Because when people eat better, they work better. Visit mysuperfood.com. That's mysuperfd.com. Or call 213-973-6145. Qualified companies can enjoy a free lunch for up to 10 managers.
Offensive zone face-off the Kings, but they lose it in. Fiala ahead now for Kempe. He comes in, crisscrosses, Fiala gets it, shoots, and he scores! What a shot by Fiala! And the Kings have come all the way back and tied the game at 3.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings.
Then Fiala to Kopitar, to Doughty, the drive, rebound, they score! Kempe! Are you kidding me? The Kings have tied the game!
Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
All right, it is Monday morning. That means it's time to crown another King of the Week. And joining me for the very first time in this setting, LA Kings play-by-play announcer John Kelly. How are you doing today, John?
I'm doing well, Jesse. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for agreeing to come on and naming a King of the Week. Now, you've never done this before, so we've explained it already. But for those listening who may not be familiar, John and I are going to go through, name our honorable mentions, our runner-ups, our runners-up. I always mix up plurals, and then our King of the Week. And as always, John, my methods are scientifically accurate and never incorrect. So, but we'll start off with you. Who is your honorable mention this week?
Yeah, this is very subjective, Jesse, obviously. So
sure,
we know that. We'll probably have some different winners, but I'll start with my honorable mention. I'm going to go with Warren Foegele, a player that scored his first of the year against Pittsburgh. And, you know, the coach said that he felt he had a little bit of a slow start. But I think that he's coming on the last, say, 2 or 3 games. And, you know, was really persistent on his goal against Pittsburgh, really a second attempt on it. And I thought that his line with Deneau and Moore was excellent against the Carolina Hurricanes on Saturday. So, you know, he's a player that obviously can kill penalties. He's got really good speed, had over 20 goals last year. And especially with the injury to Kopitar, the Kings need all the depth they can get, and they need all the speed they can get to try to create offense. So I know he only had the 1 goal on the week, Jesse, but I think his play overall was really trending upward. And again, I think his best game of the season was perhaps against the Hurricanes on Saturday.
There were 2 plays against Carolina on Saturday that stood out for me for Warren Foegele, and 1 total shift. But on the first goal that Trevor Moore scored, he's leaping into the air in front of the goalie in order to avoid blocking the shot. And then on the second goal that Trevor Moore scored that got called back, unfortunately, Foegele was ruled to have interfered with the goalie, which I know you and Jim talked about it on the telecast last night. We're recording this on Sunday the 19th. I thought the goalie should have gotten 2 minutes for embellishment. I'm fine with the goal being called back, but I thought the goalie reacted as if he had been punched in the face. I thought that was a bit much for my taste. But Warren Foegele was exactly where you want him on both of those plays, which is right in front of the goalie. Yeah,
you know, I forgot about that jumping screen that he did. You're right. It was a really acrobatic and athletic play. Yeah, you know, you mentioned the goaltender Bussey maybe embellishing. I personally have rarely seen an embellishment call on a goaltender.
Yeah, I don't think I
and
ever have.
There was some contact with the elbow. So I think that would have been, you know, tough to make calls. So it was a very complicated situation. You know, the contact to me happened outside the blue paint. And, you know, I think the Kings certainly thought about challenging, but elected not to. But yeah, I don't know if I would have called embellishment, but certainly Foegele did a great job of getting to the paint on both those situations.
Years ago, I came up with the notion that I think players should get an assist for a good screen. or there should be a separate stat, because obviously assists are awarded in a very matter-of-fact way. And a player like, for example, Fogel on Moore's goal did not touch the puck, so was not awarded a point on the play. But there are tons of goals that are scored that you can argue wouldn't have happened if there hadn't been a screening player. Or, on Fiala's goal, for example, Adrian Kempe did get a point, but he also drove center lane and took 2 defenders with him. And that decision on Kempe's part was just as important as the pass he dropped to Kevin Fiala. And Warren Fogel going to the net both of those times facilitated those. Now, the second goal didn't count, but Trevor Moore's goal maybe doesn't happen if Warren Fogel isn't out front in front of the goalie. And that's the way he's been playing all week long.
Yes, I agree with you that, a lot of times that screen is a lot more impactful than a defenseman's pass from way back in his own zone.
From behind his own goal line, yeah.
Right. But, Jesse, we know that we can't change the way scoring is counted in the NHL. Otherwise, we're going to have to go back over 100 years and change all the records, and that's probably not feasible.
I mean, I guarantee you there's somebody out there on the internet who's dying to do it, but yeah, it'd be too heavy a load to ask. But Warren Fogel is an excellent pick for honorable mention. And in honor of that, I'm going to switch who I was originally planning on picking, and I'm going to go with Phil Deneau. Because I felt that line against Carolina was tremendous. And Phil Deneau also only had 1 point on the week. It was an assist, but Jim Hiller said after the Carolina game that he felt it was Phil Deneau's best game as a King that Jim Hiller, had ever seen. And that's going back 2 years. There was a play late in the second period. The Kings were on a penalty kill, and Phil Deneau, flopped down on his stomach and poked the puck, and it left the zone. And I remember thinking to myself, if they come back and win this game, that play has to be viewed as crucially important to that effort. Now, as it turns out, they didn't win. They lost in overtime, but they did come back and get a point. And at that point, I believe it was 3-2 for Carolina. If Carolina scores on that power play and it's 4-2, I doubt very much that the Kings managed to come back, tie the game, and escape with a point. So, and also I think he went north of 80% in the faceoff dot against Carolina. I would have to look at what his faceoff win total for the week was, but I was 57.5%. I don't have the total numbers there. 1 assist, and he was an even strength assist, playing 17 minutes, 44 seconds of ice time, and again, 57.5% in the dot. And with Kopitar out, he's pretty much the only guy they have that can win a faceoff. So Phil Deneau, very strong game against Carolina, and strong enough that he makes him my honorable mention for this week.
Yeah, that's a good choice, Jesse. And, you look at the game and, the Kings got the point, and everyone focuses on the comeback. But I think a lot of folks forget that the Kings had a 5-on-3 advantage late second, early third. And again, if they score a goal there, then it could have broken the backs of the Kings. And more than likely, they don't come back and get a point. And, they could have had 2 points, obviously. But those little things in games, obviously, are so important.
Yeah, and 1-3-2 is not a tremendous record, but it's miles better than 1-4-1, which doesn't seem like that big of a difference. But I think, especially with the team going on the road for 5 games, important to get that second point out of the 3 games. And just to be clear, I should have said this at the outset, but we're talking about the week that includes the 4-3 shootout loss to the Wild, the 4-2 loss to the Penguins, and the 4-3 shootout or overtime loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. They got to start getting some wins, John. I can't keep reading. I'm sorry, by the way, to have you do this for the first time, and it's 3 losses, even if 2 of them came in extra time.
Yeah, you should have had Jim Fox on this week.
Well, you know what? Funnily enough, I don't think we've ever had Jim on to do a King of the Week.
Okay.
But all right, so those are our honorable mentions. Who was your runner-up for King of the Week, John?
I'm going to go with Kempe. He had a strong week with a goal and 3 assists. And, his goal in Minnesota that tied the game was perhaps as big a goal as the Kings have had this year. It got him a big point. And quite honestly, Jesse, as you know, they had a power play in overtime and really could have gotten 2 points. So Kempe with a great putback or rebound attempt in hockey terms. Also had 3 helpers, as I said. So I thought he had a really strong week. And, obviously, Jesse, with the injury to Kopitar, players like Kempe and Byfield and Fiala, the top players, they obviously get more pressure because now without your number one center, the other teams can focus defensively more on those players. So it's even harder, in my mind, for top players to produce when your bench is missing some key guys. So I think that's another reason why I think he had a really strong week. So he would be my runner-up pick for this week.
I'm going to refrain from saying too much about Adrian Kempe because I'll be talking about him later, just to tip my hand a little bit.
Oh wow! I wonder if he's going to be first.
I've decided that I've become an unabashed Adrian Kempe homer, so I'm just
nothing wrong with that.
But my runner-up was Quentin Byfield, and he had 4 points on the week, as did Adrian Kempe. Quentin Byfield, a goal and 3 assists, a +1. 19 minutes of ice time per game averaging, and the only weak point in Byfield's game to me at this point is in the face-off dot. He just needs to get better, and I am not going to pretend to understand how somebody gets better at face-offs. Gabe Vilardi once famously said, as a former, when he was with the Kings, somebody asked Gabe Vilardi what he felt about the work that he needed to do on faceoffs, and his response was not great, but I kind of see where he's coming from. And his response was like, yeah, I don't really think I need to work on it. You're either good at them or you aren't. And that
I disagree with that.
Well, it's not great that he said it publicly into a live mic, but I'm not sure he's wrong. I don't pay close enough attention to faceoffs to know if there was anybody who used to be bad at it, but then got good at it as their career went on. But it seems to me that you just kind of come into the league good at it or you don't. Like Yannick Perreault was always great at it, but I don't know why. I just know that he was great at
it. I think in today's game, Jesse, with video and, teams have 5 or 6 coaches. Mm-hmm. I think that if you have a former center on your coaching staff, he can really influence what the centers do. And they look at video of the opposing centers all the time. Right dot, left dot. Is this guy a strong? Does he win faceoffs with strength, or does he with quickness, anticipation, or does he cheat a lot? So I think that there is a lot more science to winning faceoffs than the average fan might think. And I do think that you can improve. Now, are you going to go from 40% to 60%? Probably not. But you can get better with hard work. There's no question. And players, if you go to practice, which you do, Jesse, almost every day at the end of practice, you have a coach at center ice dropping pucks between 2 players, and they're practicing faceoffs. So you can improve in that area.
I think the big test will be Alex Laferriere, because the Kings have Jarrett Stoll on the staff. And anytime we hear about somebody working with players, on faceoffs, it's always Jarrett Stoll. And we've seen him at practice working with players. So Alex Laferriere, a winger who has never taken a center spot on a roster, will now be called upon and was called upon to take a bunch of faceoffs and play center. But Quentin Byfield needs to improve, but a very strong week out of him. Some really nice heads up plays, scoring and assisting. So he is my runner up. John, then who is your king of the week?
Well, it's not shocking. It's got to be Kevin Fiala, scoring goals in 3 straight games. He got the party started in Minnesota with the first goal of the night, scored the second goal against Pittsburgh, and then, of course, had the game tire against the Hurricanes. I think that he has had a very consistent start to the season, and arguably has been as good a forward as they've had in the first couple of weeks of the season. So I like his speed that he's using, his creativity, and also one-timing a lot of pucks. And I like that as well. So I think Fiala's had a really good start. And I know in talking to Jim Fox, who obviously has been around here forever, he thinks that Fiala might be one of the key players on the Kings this year, just because he's that kind of player that can break games open with his speed and his shot. And I agree. You've got to have natural goal scorers. And to me, Fiala is a natural goal scorer. He doesn't have to get to the net and jam pucks in and get rebounds and tips. Obviously, you'd like him to do that, but he's a guy that's capable of scoring from distance and just putting pucks on the net and scoring with his skill. So I think he's had a really good start.
Yeah, he's got 3 goals in the 3 games we're talking about. He's a +1, playing 18 minutes, 42 seconds of ice time, 11 shots, which is pretty good. That goal he scored against Carolina was a great combo play between he and Adrian Kempe, and he's currently leading the team in goal scoring. And I agree with Jim Fox, and I think I said it to you and Jim on our 10 questions episode. To me, Fiala is the X factor, because last season he started out and it was disappointing. Now, he had wound up having an incredible second half of the season last year, but if he can have an incredible full season this year, it goes a long way towards helping the Kings' chances and efforts. And he's already off to a great start, right? He's got 4 goals. He leads the team in goals so far. And more importantly, he did take 1 penalty against Carolina where he was clearly holding the guy's jersey. Wasn't the most egregious penalty, but it was fairly obvious. It was hard to argue that he didn't do it. But he hasn't been taking a ton of dumb penalties. He hasn't been turning the puck over in dangerous areas the way he has in the past. And more importantly, he's been incredibly dangerous offensively, and he and Byfield seem to have continued their chemistry, their psychic link, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and when you have those 2 guys together, and as you know, they played together a lot late last year, and for the most part, they've been together this year. It's a lot of speed on one line, and I know they've had some different right wingers, but in today's game, Jesse, speed really it burns and it kills other teams. It's hard to defend speed in the NHL. I think that you mentioned the penalties the Kings have taken. I think personally, teams that have to defend against speed, that's probably the hardest thing, because as we know, if you just grab a jersey or get a stick around the hands, even sometimes a stick on the shin pads, you get a 2-minute minor. So it's really hard to defend speed. And I think when Byfield and Fiala are together, which they are a lot, and they're skating like they are and have, then I think it's a dynamic duo.
To add to that speed, we're going to get to the real King of the Week, the correct King of the Week, which is my pick. No, that's how it goes. Sorry. And I'm going with Adrian Kempe. And there every now and then there are plays that I get obsessed with, just little plays that I fixate on, and probably drives people crazy. And I apologize to everybody for it. Before the Carolina game, it would have been the Armia play to set up the Fiala goal. Where Armia picked the puck behind the blue line, carried it in, passed it over to Byfield. Byfield sent it over to Fiala for that nice tap-in goal. Last night, it was Adrian Kempe leaving the zone against Carolina. Byfield wins the face-off, and Kempe, I've rewatched the play maybe a dozen times, John. I'm still not 100% sure how Kempe gets the puck past the Carolina player to Fiala as they're leaving the zone. He just gets his stick on it and just sort of pushes it forward. Fiala takes it. The 2 of them clear the neutral zone. They enter the attacking zone. Fiala gets it over to Kempe. Kempe creates open space for Fiala, which I asked Fiala after the game if Kempe verbally directed him to come over to that side of the ice, or if Kempe just knew to do it, or Fiala just knew to do it. Kempe drop passes to Fiala, creating tons of open space for Fiala, then drives center lane, taking another defender with him, giving Fiala even more open space. Give Adrian Kempe 3 assists on that play. That it was a lovely shot by Fiala. It's important to have goal scorers, but none of that happens if Adrian Kempe isn't just directing the entire 200 feet of the ice like a conductor. And like I said, I've become an unabashed Adrian Kempe homer. And I just think he does everything so well. He's 4 points on the week. Look it up so I can be more specific. 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points, 2 even strength, 2 on the power play. He's 10 shots on goal, 19 minutes a game. And he took some faceoffs. He wasn't great at it, but 20% of the faceoff top, but he took some. All without Anze Kopitar for 2 of those games. He was my pick last week. He's my pick this week. If he unless a leg falls off and he just doesn't show up for a few games, he'll probably just continue to be my pick. So congratulations, Adrian Kempe, this week's King of the Week.
Great choice. And it was a great read by him on that D-zone faceoff on the game time goal. He jumps in the hole because the Kings apparently lost the faceoff, I assume. It came back and he jumps in that hole and then creates the odd man break. The other thing about that goal, watching it on the replay a few times, it was very close to me to being a pick and maybe interference on him, but he did it subtly and not enough to draw the minor. Yet, as you said, he really took out two defensemen with one move and one play, and that allowed Fiala to come down as offside and score short side. So really heads up play by Kempe at both ends of the ice.
It's funny, the face-off wins and losses, for years, I never thought about how they were awarded. I just kind of looked at the number and said, oh, well, so-and-so is, X percent. So that's good and that's bad. Watching the game last night, it was at the end of regulation. Carolina's defending. Kings are attacking. It's in that zone. I want to say Laferriere was out for a draw. Carolina won the draw, like very definitively. They won the draw, but they won it back to the goalie, who then froze the puck. And less than a second probably ticked off the clock. And the end result is another faceoff in the defending zone for Carolina. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I'm scoring that, that's a win for Carolina. But strategically, if I'm the Kings, I'm perfectly fine with it. Okay, fine. We lost that draw, but we get another crack at it. Exact same spot, basically the same game situation, right? No time ticked off. And there are tons of situations like that where someone will win, right, definitively within a second of the faceoff draw. One team will control the puck, but then they'll take two steps back, behind their own goal line, and before you know it, an opponent is pouncing on them and creating a turnover, and you go like, all right, well, they won the faceoff, but there's a turnover, and now the other team's got it. So who really wins and loses faceoffs? Is there a time limit on like who has possession in order to determine who wins a faceoff?
Yeah, I think you'd have to talk to the off-ice officials about that, because sometimes, as you said, there's a scramble play off the face-off, and there are 4 or 5 guys, battling for the puck, and it pops free, and then a player gets it. So does that mean right away that team gets credited for a face-off win when clearly it was really a tie on the face-off? The other thing is, on face-offs, they're probably a lot more complicated than the average fan believes. It's so important for the wingers to be active on the face-offs and jump in the holes, just like Kempe did on the game time goal Saturday, or pick the players so your teammate can get the puck. So it's not just the 2 guys in the face-off circle, Jesse, obviously. It's the other 4 players on the ice that can determine oftentimes whether you win or lose a draw.
One of the things that always and still drives me crazy about baseball is that a walk is not considered an at-bat. Just never made any sense to me. If it's a situation where the face-off, like I said, late in the game, where the face-off is won clearly, but immediately covered by the goalie, and you just go back and redo the face-off, I feel like that shouldn't count in your numbers. Because like Laferriere, I think he finished 1 for 7 on the night, or 2 for 7 or something. And I'm like, well, that one doesn't count. Like that, a second ticked off the clock, and then they just reset and did it all over again. Like, I don't know. Anyway, that's just... So the Kings go on the road for 5 games, John. I didn't prep you that I was going to ask you this, but I'll just ask it anyway. How many points? There's 10 possible points up for grabs on this road trip. How many points do they need to come back with for the road trip to be not a disaster?
I think anytime you go on the road, at minimum, you want to be 500. Okay. So I'd say 5 points minimum. I think 6 points would be a really good road trip, and anything more than 6, 7 to 10 would be excellent, because they have a tough trip. St. Louis had a big win after getting pounded by Chicago. They beat Dallas, a very good team. And then you have to go into Dallas, obviously a Stanley Cup contending club. Nashville's a better team. The Blackhawks are a much better team. As I said, they won in St. Louis the other night, 8-3. So On paper, you might say, well, and then they go to San Jose at the end of the trip, a club that's really struggling, obviously. But, the road games are tough, but the Kings have played pretty good hockey on the road. They really should have gotten at least a point in Winnipeg. So to summarize again, I think 6 points or more would be considered a very good trip.
And not an insignificant trip for you personally, as the team goes back to St. Louis. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, I've been asked a lot about it.
I'm
and,
sure.
21 years there and grew up there, obviously. And my dad's banner's in the rafters. The press box is named after him. So it'll be emotional. But, I said to some other people, Jesse, I've gone back there before as a visiting announcer with Tampa Bay and Colorado. So it's not the first time, although this will be different because I just finished 21 consecutive years as the Blues announcer. Obviously, was an announcer the year they won the Cup. So it'll be emotional, but probably the biggest thing is I haven't seen my wife and kids in about 3 or 4 weeks. So I'm excited to see all of them and my mom and my siblings. So that'll be a lot of fun as well. They're all coming to the game.
Excellent. Well, travel safe. Enjoy whatever happens out there in St. Louis, and hopefully the Kings come back with at least 8 points out of this road trip.
Oh, you said 8. Okay. I said 6.
I'm hoping. Six would be great.
10.
Yeah, well, yeah. Why not? Run the board. Exactly.
Yeah, let's be greedy.
Sure. Why not? John Kelly, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
All right, Jesse. Anytime.